Hello everyone, it's Chelsea McAvoy, the Director of Technology for Living's upcoming new short documentary, The Evolution of Technology for Independent Living. Welcome to this special episode of We Talk Tech as we release some behind-the-scenes footage. There's so much impactful knowledge and experiences from our 4 interviewees that we couldn't possibly pack it all into one documentary. So here's some extra footage about past technology and a look back to see how far we've come. Enjoy!
I'm 76.
You are not.
I am. 77, 2 months. Okay, I was born in 1945. At that time, we would have, every summer, we would have some kind of a polio epidemic. The first vaccine came out in 1952. But by that time, I had already had it. We sort of feel like dinosaurs because of the fact that during the time when the people my age, you see a lot of people who had had polio at that point. I was the youngest person ever to have a tendon transfer done. They used to wait till you were adult because they felt you needed to know how to change the angle of movement and stuff like this, whereas my surgeon felt that if you have a reasonably intelligent child, that they would learn much faster. And so I do remember one of the earliest memories is having to go to conferences of a sea of white coats and having to try to walk with them. But for them, the technology that they had at that time was braces. And that was all I was able to have, the surgery and the brace and, of course, exercises and what have you. So I guess that probably is what prompted my desire to become a physiotherapist, because I had physiotherapy at that age. I was using braces when I was between the ages of 3 and 6. After my second final procedure of reconstructive surgery, I stopped wearing braces. Then when I was 12, I had an ankle fusion, which was internal fixation rather than external fixation, which are the braces. And so as a result, I didn't have to wear that kind of thing. Accessibility at that point wasn't bad because I was walking. I went to university, I did all those things. I even took ballet classes at one point, which you really wouldn't want to see me as a ballerina at that age. But anyway, I always set goals like that for myself all through my life, and then went to university and became a physiotherapist and worked as a physiotherapist for 25 years. Braces have evolved to the point that they're using a lot of sort of very light materials, because braces used to be very heavy, always, because it was made of steel and that kind of thing. Certainly technology has advanced tremendously over the years. And actually I was talking to a friend of mine that I've known for probably 50 years, and she's also a physio. And I was talking to her yesterday, and I was mentioning that I was going to be doing this film. And she said, well, she said, Zasha, you are so lucky. And I said, why? She said, technology has moved along and you sort of moved with it. And now you're using all the stuff that they didn't have and I didn't need before, but I do need now.
When I think back of what technologies there were when I was first injured, I guess different types of technology, but obviously wheelchair. That I was never able to effectively push a manual wheelchair, and so I had to use a power wheelchair. But I'm a big guy, and so right from the beginning, it was trying to figure out different things that would work with my chair. One of the big, I was thinking about this the other day, the table. There was never a table that was designed to actually fit on a wheelchair that was functional. And 37 years later, I haven't actually seen much as well. So I started building my own. And yeah, it doesn't seem like the typical technology thing, but for example, this table that I have, I can put it up and down myself. I got the idea from an airplane and the airplane seats. I can open it. I incorporated inside this table like 12 volts, so I could plug different things into it, which is interesting because today now my iPhone will kind of last forever. But when I first started out 37 years ago, laptops, all that kind of stuff would die pretty quick. So having it plugged into my chair was kind of innovative at the time. So this is my custom built table. It's still a work in progress. I originally made it because I'm a tall guy and I don't fit at most restaurant tables. So if I wanted to have something to eat or drink with friends and socialize, I needed something. So I came up with this table. And it's got a few different functions. For example, and this probably blocks your camera, I can open it, and inside I'm able to store things, which used to be my laptop. I could carry my laptop or tablet inside, and then I put 12-volt connectors so that I could keep things powered, and that 12 volts connected to my wheelchair, so I can power everything from my wheelchair batteries. In 1986, I actually convinced, which is now Rogers, I guess, Rogers Wireless, to put a mobile phone in my van. And that mobile phone took up the entire underneath passenger seat. That was the actual mobile phone. And then I had the handset in front of me, which I managed to hook it up to work with sort of wireless. But you couldn't take it out of the van. But I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia when I had my injury. But I was the first person there that had a cell phone in a vehicle. These predate your smart plugs. This was a technology called X10. And pretty well everything for assistive technology ran off X10 originally. So you would literally plug these modules into a regular plug. It would use your existing electrical system. So different than Google and Alexa and all these things today, they still have a smart plug. Like you'll still have a little, like we'll have plugs here, but they kind of have their own little system, whereas this system uses your whole house system. Now the advantage of that, you can plug them anywhere. They're universal, they work. Disadvantage is, for example, if there's interference in your wires, they're not going to work that great, right? So they also had appliance modules and they had lamp modules. They're all a little bit different capability. And then to work with these, you still had to have some kind of interface. So you'd have a button system like that, or we were talking about voice. So in my case, I actually had voice that I could use. I would use a microphone, use the voice, and then I would be able to control my appliances through the X10. So all the stuff you're using today, I was already doing that 30 years ago. It was just a little bit more of a cumbersome system. There was a system, and you can look this up, it was called Butler in a Box. And it was one of the first attempts to use voice recognition software for controlling devices around a home environment. And it was the most frustrating thing because you had to retrain it all the time. But it's interesting because the way that you would say, hey Google or whatever today, it also had to have a trigger. I think that's where they got it from, the idea of having a trigger word. And in those days it was master, which I wasn't so keen on. But that was called Butler in a Box. So I had that system for a long time. And Dragon Naturally Speaking, that's a critical one for me. It's a voice software that I use to type with my computer. And I also created some technologies myself around that sort of thing many years ago. But that's a whole nother interview.
I remember my environmental controls consisted of the switch that I could easily reach, and it would turn on my electric typewriter. It was IBM Selectric typewriter with erase. So that was a huge step forward in typing. To the point now, as I say, we have the gold standard voice control, everything. Well, manual wheelchairs, when I was initially hurt, they were just the standard one where you pull up on the canvas and to fold it. And power wheelchairs, as I say, the E&J was the technology. That chair lasted. That was their selling point, I think, was they lasted forever.
My first wheelchair was a Quickie 3 that I purchased in North Vancouver by just walking in a wheelchair store and buying it. There were no days then where you had occupational therapists and physiotherapists who did seating assessments and looked at what you needed. You just went in and bought a chair. And after that, I had 2 Quickie 2s. I had one for about 9 years and one for about 8 years. And so I've had 5 manual chairs. Then I had a tie light, and now I have my new tie light. It's about 3 weeks old. Yeah, well, manual chairs are quite a bit lighter than they used to be. Now you can get an ultra light, so your manual chairs are lighter. They have quite a bit more flexibility. In a power, they've evolved considerably. It tilts backwards, and it also lifts up and lifts down. Very much more flexible than my first power chair. My first power chair, you just got in it and you went frontwards and backwards. But now with the power chairs, they tip, they tilt, and they lift.
What were some technologies that were available to you at the start of your diagnosis, or were there any?
I would say there probably wasn't. Not that I was aware of. I've been using Dragon Naturally Speaking voice dictation on the computer since about 2005 when I worked for the city of Burnaby. But that version was a 5 and now I use a 15. So the Dragon Naturally Speaking 5 was pretty unsophisticated. When I was first diagnosed, there was almost nothing. There were no accessible buses. SkyTrain hadn't even started yet. There was no wheelchair accessibility in the community. I think the technology for people like me who've had MS for like 40 years and people with spinal cord injury has definitely improved the quality of life. Because now I can live at home and manage at home on my own. And probably 20 years ago, I'd end up in a care facility. But you didn't have those things to turn your lights on and off, turn your fireplace on and off, use Dragon Naturally Speaking on the computer. You would end up not being able to live in the community.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this special episode of We Talk Tech. Stay tuned for part 2 when we talk about present technologies that have helped people with disabilities live independently. We'll see you next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!